the longest period of time. It's not just hitting the ball that's going to do that. And although I've lived a lot in this world, with my background on the golf machine and mat, lead, those type of things, the reality is that's not what scores. And everybody at the end of the day, their preference on green things is all about who puts it in the hole. And so from a coaching standpoint, that's chipping and pitching and putting, which is why I think green reading is key. I think understanding how to use wedges, how to use the bounce in a bunker, and then around the green, pitching and finesse wedges are huge. And most people, I don't think, do a very good job of that. The best person I've seen is James Sequin, who teaches it. Everybody pretty familiar with James? He's a pretty good buddy of mine. He's the best. We teach very similar. Again, it's a pretty funny tree, but we spend a lot of time in that as well. So we're in California, crops from McGrady, but that's the my opinion is that coaching is way more how do we get the scores lower. Who comes back to me and he's doing that well and he's mastered it. Doesn't necessarily mean he needs more of that. He may need more somewhere else to make it play better. But that's not to say we wouldn't add to that. Yep. So a lot of times I'm gonna want to try and jump. So I will use. I'll do speed checks, light, heavy, normal, to get them used to. And as soon as they start to get so much heavier, then they start to use their body and they start to do this a little bit and get used to when they're trying to use speed. Everyone familiar with snag? Snag golf? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So the snapper. The snapper is like it looks like a big kid's party streamer, and it's on this little stick. I've seen more benefit to getting people to get up with the snapper because they're trying to make as much noise as possible with this thing behind the ball. It encourages them to use the ground. If they just stand here and do this, they can't do it. But as soon as they feel like they're trying to get up on their toes and do this, they're pushing, that's them pushing out the ground. Now all of a sudden they have the ability to do it. Most people have inhibited glutes. They can't. When we did this screen on everybody and we tell them, okay, I need you to do a deep squat, so they stand here and you ask them to do that, most people have got no chance of doing it. The reality is if you can't get down and do a lot of this, it's hard to jump up out the ground. So they're not going to be able to maximize it as much. You wouldn't have them doing box jumps. I think my man would attest to that. Where is my... You'd attest to that, right? Yeah. So, but to some degree, you can get them used to it by these type drills. That's good. A little bit's better than nothing. How much is that going to accelerate your club? Every case-by-case basis. But that's how I'd implement it. Smalls to start with, and then think of this. You load a club and you unload it. If you don't unload it, then you never put all the energy into the ball. Anytime you try and take something from out of line to in line, like if I was going to throw this club as far as I could, I'd be way more like that. The more you get used to firing that way, now you've got a chance of doing it here. So look, if I was going to chop something really hard, imagine, there you go. I'll try not to break this club, don't worry. Alright, if this was a block of wood, and I was gonna hit this as hard as I can, I'd go this way, right? As hard as I could if there was a block of wood. Now, problem is we don't play golf like that, but that would be the most amount of force. I took the axe, measured it with an axe, from outer line to in line. I'll pick the tees up. Now, if I go from here and I go here, this is my axe, and I'm here, the most amount of force I can put into that block is going to be like that, isn't it? Now I'm using all those three forms of force. I'm not thinking about it. If you give me a big old axe, anybody here, and you ask someone to swing it, they're going to inherently use all those components. Why? Because they're trying to put all the force they can in it. You're not thinking about what you're doing. So when someone says, well, I don't understand how you use the ground, or how do you use the ground, go pick a big ass axe up and swing it. Would you agree with that back there? So just it's no different to tossing tyres. You see these people CrossFit. Who does CrossFit here? Anybody? Based on that analogy. The deadlift. Pelvic powerhouse. I mean that's just stuff that's how you do it. It's not rocket science, and even if you only have an inch, if you didn't have anything before, now you've increased it. Everybody's looking, thinking that they've got to be over here. Most people would benefit from just a little bit. One Viagra helps. You take the whole lot and you're in deep trouble. So they tell me, I wouldn't know. Alright? But that's the reality of it is all these factors, you put them in there, you just give a little bit helps. Doesn't mean you have to do a lot of it. Most people don't need a lot. They just need a little and they need to leave feeling pretty good. I think we want to help people and we end up giving them too much stuff, more than they can handle. People are like paper shredders. 1, 2, 3 pieces, it all works good. You start putting 5 or 6 there, you jam that down. Look good. Any other questions on full swing? Yes? Yep. So you can use it in different ways and you can place it in different places. Do we have a putter grip anywhere here? A putter? Anyone have a putter? That sounds like a no. Okay. So where you place it, again, it gives you a sensation. I mean, you can use this relationship. The Titleist here, this would be just like the putter grip. You're on the back of the shaft, well, your perception of where you are and what you need to do, it allows you to feel where you are and where the face is in space. And a lot of times, because the handle is round, our perception of where it is becomes very skewed. But as soon as you put a flat edge, just like if you have a baseball bat, we do it with kids, and half the bat's flat, now they have a better understanding of what they need to do to square the bat up. It's the same with the flat part of the putter grip on the back of the shaft. It gives you a perception. Oh, thank you very much. These are my favourite grips too, isn't it? Because they're nice and flat. The smaller ones don't do as well. Anything that's flat, Golf Pride makes a really good one. It's flat like this and it's a little bit bigger than this camera one. They're really good. But essentially, what people tend to find is they understand where the back of the shaft is, and my most common reaction is they're feeling it, and they take it to the top and they tell me that feels really shut. And I say to my argument is, well, in a three-dimensional world, that's probably very well like the square. The face is pretty square to top. Now they have an understanding of where that's supposed to be halfway down, and their release profile. Some people are going to be a little more and a little less, but it equates them proprioceptively. They have much better awareness of where the face is. That's why I use it. A lot of people who have done a lot of this, and they get used to using a lot more rotation and slowing it down, they tend to find that they need the face to feel more closed here, so that when they just keep this here and they turn through, the ball goes pretty straight. But I've had a lot of success with it, just on the back of the shaft. Some people who have no understanding of the short game of how to make the face work, I actually put a putter grip on the shaft just like this, so now they understand how to put the loft on and roll the face, expose the bounce, and then take it back off coming through. It's a very useful reference to people to see the relationship between the hand and the face. Unfortunately, I don't let you play like that. Otherwise, I think it would help a lot of people. I think it's like cheating, really, but once you show someone how to do it, now all of a sudden, most of my students, they're like, well, why can't I just play like that? I was like, well, they don't let you do that. They want the game to be hard, so people want to play it. Yes? If it helps some people, yes. That's a case by case. I mean, that's more from where they feel this. But that's still, it's a fairly flat edge, but it's nothing like this. If you'd let me put the reminder on the side of the shaft that way, maybe, I think they'd let you do that here, just because it's on the back of the shaft. So you're supporting the back of it. Alright, you want to talk about some wedge shots? Okay. So, finesse wedges. The biggest difference between the best wedge players, we talked about finesse. If everybody wants to come, actually I can do it face up. I think this is the, I want everybody to stand up, so we're going to do another screen. I know you're going to be sick of this, but I just want to show you where this is so useful.
Yeah,
So,
let's do it.
everybody make a fist. Don't punch the person next to you. Okay. Make a fist.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I want you to extend your wrists back and flex them forwards. Now, ideally, you want about 60 degrees of flexion and extension. The great thing is that Titleist 6 line is actually 60 degrees. So you can put the club this way and you can do that. If you can do this both ways, you've got a normal amount of wrist motion. Radial, cocking and uncocking, hands at your side. Now, I want you to make a thumb like you're going to go hitchhiking. And I want you to hitchhike, fly fish. Hitchhike, fly fish. Now, some of you will see that your hands dive inwards, right? Are you all seeing that? So you have a limitation in radial deviation. That's fine, you can compensate for that with strengthening the grip, lengthening your left thumb, but you need to know that because for the short game, the way your wrists work is important. So your students, if you didn't do any other assessment, this would be pretty important because this is what puts your hands on the clock. Okay, next one, hands to your side, palm up. Make a fist, thumbs out. Okay, palms up, palms down, palms up, palms down. Alright, is that hard for anybody? Who said it was hard? Okay, so for you, that might be difficult, excuse me, to expose the bounce in the backswing. But you can compensate for that by making the grip stronger.
Oh, I've got a dumb phone.
Yep, and that's using the bounce. You can't hit it with your right hand, absolutely. You can't hit it with your right hand doing that. You're going to do this, which is using the bounce, which is what we want, which is what optimum for the short game. Now, you're assuming you have the right setup. But you know how we talked about the sequence today, the best ball strikers. The sequence isn't the same with pitching. The sequence is very different. It's very much the player sets up. I'm a big proponent. If you said to me, you asked me what's my preference. If I was going to teach the short game, and do teach the short game, I try, and as much as possible, because there's no power of any sorts, get everybody to try and do it the same way. Just from experience that it's for a fairly stock, medium trajectory, spinning shot, I think this is the best way to do it. The best players all seem to do this in some variation. So the setup is a lot more, the ball's forwards versus back. The reason the ball's forwards is we want the club to be relatively shallow, close to the low point of the arc, so the club's not coming in this way. What happens if the club is descending a lot? Okay, which part of the club am I exposing? The dig. Is the dig good for spinning it or bad for spinning it? With no speed? Not very good. Okay, I'm not using the bounce. So it's very hard to take the club and do a lot of this. That's kind of a strong position. That's not going to be very conducive to getting the thing up in the air. So I want the ball position up. I want weight left. Now, if someone has a left leg issue, like a great instability, we'll work around it. We may get the left leg, the right leg up closer to it, where the left leg would be, and I'll do this. I'll compensate for it. But essentially, the weight would be left. The feet are very narrow and very flared. The hips are quite square, but your torso or your thorax is actually very open this way. So down the line, it looks completely jacked up. I'm just being honest, but it's going to work. So hips are pretty square, stance is narrow, balls up, weights left, so much so that you should be able to do that. Chest is twisted, like a twisted spine. We're doing that because we want to use upper body, we don't want our hips to work, and we want loads of speed. So we're creating a very weak position, which is steep, and then our release and our delivery of the club, we're going to roll the face, and then we're going to throw our arms and pull our body through. That's a very shallow motion. If we set up and did that with a normal position, like this, you go underneath or thin every single shot. It'd be no good. But when we get the weight left, the chest, hip square, feet are flared, chest open, twisted, and we roll the face on the way back, and we throw the club on the way through. Now all of a sudden, we get pretty good contact. We're able to get spin on it. So square, open, roll the face. Now all of a sudden we can send shots fairly low, medium trajectory with spin on it without a divot. The wind doesn't do anything. Plays in just about any conditions, whether it's Augusta, whether it's at the British Open. The only thing you have to watch is your bounce, and that's a great opportunity for all of us to fit people for the right bounce. Most people go buy a wedge off the rack and they've got no clue the difference between 14 degrees and 11 degrees of bounce. 14 is too much, a little bit bouncy. But that technique to me, and the sequence, the fact that when I set up to it, hips are square, spine's open, I'm intentionally rolling the face, so halfway back that thing's going to be like this, that's put the lock on it. When I get to the top, my whole upper body is pulling me through, so that kinematic sequence will look way different. It's not going to be the same. It's very fast, but it has no power to it. We need the speed to be able to create the spin. You hear the noise of that just going through? And that's what the best wedge players do. Now, can we chip on that green over there? Mm-hmm. Or is it only for putting? Okay. So when we go to the green, the beauty of this is the shots around the green with a 60, with a 56, with a in a bunker, they're all the same. The same principles are at work. The bounce is your friend. I think one of the best ways to practice in a bunker is there's a lot of left-handed to it. Right hand guard, so I need an 8-iron for the bunker. Is there a bunker over there? Yeah. Perfect. I'm going to need an 8-iron for the bunker, and then a couple of 60 and a 60 with like 6 degrees of bounce. And
yeah, Mark, I have another bag over there for you.
Beautiful. Yeah. You're the man. Okay. So when we get to that, the technique is very different. Now, my gentleman who wanted more compression, what did we do to the distance from the ball?
Closer.
Okay. So just the same with this. The difference between this and the bunker shot generally is going to be, here I'm a little closer because I'm trying to create that lower shot. I'm using the bounce, but I'm using a very shallow early release, sweeping this way. I'm intentionally almost trying to do this. So the gentleman who talked about Holman saying use your right hand, absolutely. I'm here. That's the technique. But I think it's easier to explain if you go through the whole checklist. Because if your body's out of position and you just use your right hand, you get that. And I think that's what most amateurs and beginners I've seen struggle with. Because what do most of them do? They set up to the ball like this, right? And they tell me, oh, I hit it good, but it won't stop. In Alabama we'd say, duh. But the reason you get away with that in the South, it's not the PC probably. The reality is, it's very hard to have it come out soft if you've got loads of sharpling, which is why the ball needs to be up. And the more you get away from it, now all of a sudden the shallower you get this angle, the more you can use the bounce, the softer it's going to come out. That's the easiest way to play short game shots. Unfortunately, not everybody does that. But the best players, how far do you think the average tour player would probably hit a 56 degree full swing with a finesse wedge? Okay, who says more than 100? Who says 100? Who says less than 100? I would say the less than 100s are probably closer than any of the others. The other nuance I left out, on a power scale, 7 out of 10. Now, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to only swing at 7 out of 10? What am I trying to regulate?
Total spin.
Spin. Spin and trajectory. Now, the harder I swing and the faster I swing, I'm going to create maybe more spin. But when we come to a variety of conditions, particularly wind and turf conditions, you've got to remember, we're not just taking into consideration with that what we're hitting off, we're also taking into consideration what we're hitting into. So the tour plays a variety of conditions. When the greens are wet and bent grass, and I start swinging like this, that ball is not going to react the same way as it would when I would be on very hard new Bermuda greens. So I need to have something that reacts the same in the biggest variety of conditions possible. That means a tempo and a speed to where I'm left-handed, so this is a bit awkward. Looks more like that. The good wedge players look like they're tossing it or like they're just hitting the crap out of it. Tossing it, right? So they're set up to it. It's a lot. They get the setup. Again, we're getting back to setup, very simple. Hips are square, torso's open, roll the face. They're swinging way more like that. The trajectory goes down and the spin, assuming you have the right bounce, is very controlled. So the ball gets on the green and goes. It doesn't go sucking backwards, which does you no good whatsoever from a ball control standpoint. The beauty of these things and the TrackMan Combine, anyone been on a TrackMan Combine? It's great. 60 shots. Starts at, I think it's 40 yards or 60 yards and goes all the way up to your driver. And you hit it specific as a target at specific distances. But it is amazing how good the best wedge players are and how consistent they are. They know how far they hit it and they know how much spin they're putting on there depending on the wind, and they'll say, oh, that went 91 or that went 65. That's how they're so good, and I think the commonality to all of them, they all seem to use very similar techniques. We're talking finesse wedges here. I'm not talking a full swing. I'm not talking about a wedge where they might just look like their regular golf swing. But if you start to watch and you watch the best wedge players around the green inside about 120 yards, that's how they play. They're not playing, they're not using the same swing. The ball's slided down, there's not much spin on it, it's very controlled. But it's a very easy technique to master, set up orientated, and then it's very different from the full swing. Loads of rotations, the face using it off, throwing the bounce back and forth. Understanding that you set everything up to be steep, chest here, and then you just throw the club. So we talked about this morning on why people have the yips and why people have issues. Most of the time people stick it in the ground and they flub it because they first off use a technique which is inferior. They stand there like this with the ball back, loads of sharpening, and they wonder why they keep laying the sod over it or they keep hitting it thin. The chance of them consistently getting that ball to do what they want is very, very minimal. Now they keep doing that. Every time they execute it's bad. Now they have a phobia. Now it becomes mental. I truly believe that mental starts with a poor preparation. If you can set up to the ball better, understand the technical nuances of being able to hit a specific shot. Remember, I'm adamant that you can't hit all the shots from the same setup. Now all of a sudden it's much easier for you to play and be able to get the outcome and the ball control that you want. Just the same with putting. Depending on how you want to putt, your setup, your perception. Putting is three things. Can you read the green? Can you aim? And can you start it on the line with good speed? If you can do that, putting is nothing more. I don't care if you use a frying pan. I haven't banned that yet. It's one of those things, if you know how to do it and you can repeat it, that's all that matters. And you see the ball going in the hole enough, you're going to have enough confidence. Once you've done it once, you can do it again. But the short game stuff is the technique is key, and the best short game players do things very similar. If you understand that, I think you'll have a much better chance. If we go over here and do some chipping and pitching, it's just the same for bunker shots and chip shots around the green. Most players who best short game players have speed at the right point. Most amateurs have speed at such a wrong point it's not even funny. Mainly because they put so much damn load in the shot for such a short shot that they can't put that back on the ball without decelerating, and they decelerate in the wrong spot. And now they have issues. Most people's wedges are too upright, and they've got the wrong bounce configuration too. So those would be my big things on the wedges for sure. But that technique, again, very simple. And you can use it up to an 8-iron or a 9-iron. I mean, hell, you could use it with a 7-iron, it wouldn't matter. It's the same shot, it's going to be fairly low, it's going to have some spin on it. Hips square, weights left, feet are flared, spine's twisted, you're a little bit close to it. You choke down, you're going to roll the face. I'm lining it up slightly towards the heel to allow, and I've rotated my chest open like there's a laser beam. I've actually rotated the plane more to where I'm like a thorax open type position. That's allowing me to maximise the club path going a little bit left and throwing the bounce at it. But that's the best way. You see how these are coming out pretty low, they're not high, they're not rolling up the face. With the old grooves, you could get away with playing the ball back more like this, and doing this loop and spinning it. But when they changed the grooves back, we've regressed back. Well, not regressed, but the technique has had to go back to more of a Sevi Ballesteros, using the bounce, understanding how to put the lock on the club and deliver it. And the beauty of that, when you start to use the bounce, you can actually hit it off of bad lies, not just these really good, light, fluffy lies. You actually start to enjoy more of these tight lies, which most people don't like. But once you get the setup right and the technique correct and the bounce right, you can hit shots like that that spin more, and you've got more control off of these tight lies. Most people have a phobia of that because they have such a bad technique. They're so far from it. They don't use the bounce. Club comes back, it's loaded up like they're going to hit 500 yards, and then they stick it in the ground, and greenkeepers don't like that, and people really get nervous. So, to me, that's a pretty easy way to play. Correct? Any questions on that? No questions mean you're tired and or you think I'm full of it, or you're ready to go over here. So let's go over here.